What is going on, people? Look at all these people. We got a full house, guys. Welcome. I'm excited to chat with everybody today.
Are we waiting for anyone else to join in the waiting room, or should we just start and people?
No, let's wait another couple minutes. You know, some people might be getting their DSL line set up and internet troubles. So we'll just wait for a few more seconds and a few more minutes, and then we'll let people in. Meanwhile, I can just get everybody, if you guys don't mind, turn your cameras on so I can interact with you guys. It'll be a fun conversation to be had for the next hour or so. And I don't want you guys to have any filters. Ask me anything you have on your mind. I know there's a bunch of questions you guys have asked me in the sign-up forms, so I'll try to go over those as well as we get through this. But yeah, live questions are also preferred. You want to kind of give the intro and stuff, that the announcements or anything else you have other than, are those the only things you have, like an announcement, or you have other things like an intro straight up?
Nope, just an intro, but we can do that now if you'd like.
Give me 1 second. Let me just make sure nobody's in the waiting room.
For sure.
All right, nobody's in the waiting room. You can go ahead. Let's do this.
Awesome. Thank you. So hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We're really glad you're here today. So we'll be recording this session. So if you can just turn all your cameras on so you can see our beautiful faces, that'd be awesome. And we have a very exciting guest here today.
Yeah, so please everyone, welcome Sherjan. He has spoken at a wide array of events, including TEDx, Harvard, University of Toronto, and he's here today to share some tips on landing that dream job that you may have. So please pay attention, and any questions you have, he seems very open to answering, and I hope you all enjoy today.
Awesome, thanks guys, appreciate it. Thanks for the intro, I love that. Hi guys, nice to meet you all. My name is Sherjan. I am the founder of this online coaching business. It was offline for the last 9 years, but because of COVID, I am online as well. So I appreciate you guys taking the time today. So we have about an hour together. We can go longer if you want to, if people have a lot of questions. I know we have a lot of people here today. And as people join, I'll just let them come into the waiting room and add them. So today, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna start with my intro, just to get you guys to know a little bit about who I am and why I am speaking to you guys today, and why there are some things that I think you guys can learn from me. So we'll go through that. And then what we're gonna focus on is all the things that I think can help you right now, especially given that it's a pandemic and a recession in some places, in helping you get your dream job. So I have about 6 topics that I want to cover today. So all of that is probably going to take about 30 to 35 minutes. And then after that, we'll go through questions, live questions, and also questions that I have saved up here in my, in the onboarding form that you guys have. So that's kind of the high level story. All right, so let's get started about my intro. I'm a Canadian, just like you guys as well. So I'm in Toronto, and this is my first actual mentor hour with the university in Alberta. So I'm really excited to have you guys here. Historically, I've personally never been to Alberta, but historically I've done Vancouver and Toronto as the 2 kind of chapters for my workshops, but excited to partner with you guys. And thank you to Lara and Bree for, replying to my cold email. So I think this is a good relationship that's starting. So, so my quick background, guys, is I studied aerospace engineering at the University of Toronto. And I had a pretty nice GPA, 3.0, which is not a good GPA as you guys can imagine. But based on that, I had a dream. I wanted to work in, cool companies, and had dreams just like you guys have of working in top firms. It could be in banking, consulting, accounting, even tech. And it was very challenging for me to do that. But, if I didn't tell you that, tell you the other side of the story, which is I was a vice president in investment banking at Morgan Stanley. I was also an investor at Google in their capital G investment arm. And then I was also an analyst in investment banking at Morgan Stanley as well, in their tech investment banking group in San Francisco. So if someone just tells you those 3 things, that, hey, here's my resume, it's easy to say, okay, must have a pedigree background, must have done all the things right. But the truth couldn't be farther than that, right? So low GPA, never studied business, a non-target background, international student as well. So all of those things were the bottlenecks that I faced. And when I could break the barrier, I knew there's a lot of people just like yourself who may be facing similar issues or similar struggles. And you can learn a few things from me. And if that helps you, hopefully gets you to whatever, dream job that you're aiming for, or at least gets you to, inch forward a little bit. So that's kind of the whole idea of what I started. So 10 years ago, I graduated, or 11 years ago, I graduated from University of Toronto during a recession. Then ended up going to UCLA for a master's in financial engineering. And that's kind of, where my career a little bit started. And I did investment banking in California, and then also worked in Hong Kong for a bit. So this workshop series and stuff that I started was also 10 years ago. So next month is my 10-year anniversary on doing this. And so far I've taught about 21,000 students, which, has been something that I'm personally passionate about. So anyways, based on that background, what I want to take the topic into now is, purely into actually helping you, giving you some actionable advice on how you guys can kind of go through what we're facing today. So first of all, pandemics suck, right? I've never been through one. I'm not 100 years old, but we are all going through one right now. And the recession is also part of that. So, being Canadians, as a Canadian, it's very hard to get a job, in general, especially in the industries of business. We don't have a lot of investment banks, not a lot of accounting firms and stuff that are here as compared to they are in the, south of the border. And sometimes your passions might be going and joining the New York office for McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or PwC. And it's just harder. So I totally understand your pain, and I was in the same shoes about 11 years ago. So one thing that I want you guys to understand is, having, being drawn or given the shorter end of the stick or something like that, it's not the end of the world, right? Just understand that, hey, it will take you a little bit longer than, let's just say, the kid who goes to Harvard, but you can still make it and you can still navigate to your dream job, but you just got to be focused on being long-term greedy, right? So the first part that I want you to understand is acknowledging the things that are happening around you and understanding that that's just the status quo. That's just what is happening. So for example, right now there's a pandemic going on, and during a pandemic, there's just less opportunity on the street. Now, why are there less opportunities on the street? First thing is, think about just business activity, right? Business activity is super, super low, and business forecast is super, super low. So companies don't have a lot of activity that they're seeing coming up in this year or next year. So what they're going to do is they're going to be like, yo, we don't need that much manpower to handle all this. So when they don't need that, they don't need to hire folks. So the number of jobs that are available is super, super low. Number of candidates that want to get those jobs is super, super high. So that just means the chances of getting a job is extremely low. Now, the first thing I want you guys to do is acknowledge that fact. That's just reality. Everybody here and everybody around you is facing that, but you can't dwell on it. You can't, sit on it and be like, oh my God, times are tough, so I can't get a job. All you have to focus on is what can you do, right? So that leads me to my second point, which is related to getting a job. When you get a job, or you're trying to get a job, or trying to get your dream job, 50% of that is luck, right? So that means things that are not in your control. All that stuff is just stuff that you cannot have any impact on. But the other 50%, that is in your control. So today I'm going to tell you guys about a few things that you can control today and help, build upon. And that should hopefully get you a little bit closer. Maybe not gets you the ultimate offer, but gets you a little bit better prepared for the job that you're going for. So the first thing I want you guys to do is focus on brand, right? Now, what does that mean? Most of us, you guys, a lot of you guys are in undergrad, for example, or even in business school, let's just say, you're still very, very early stage of your career, right? You're in school for maximum 4 years. If you do business school, you're in school for 5 to 6 years in total. But then your career is 40, 50, even 60 years long, right? Sometimes. So that's the bigger part of your life. But what people forget is early on in your life, you're always in brand chasing mode, right? So we want to go work at Goldman Sachs, we want to go work at McKinsey, all that stuff. And that's fine. Early on in your life, that's a good thing to do because you get street credibility because of that. But later on in your life, you need to become a brand yourself. You need to evolve from being a brand chaser, and you need to evolve into brands chasing you, right? And that's going to happen for all of you here. But you'll need to start thinking about that as early as possible, especially now when it's very hard, close to impossible to meet people, right? You're not going to be able to go to info sessions. You're not going to be able to impress people at a coffee chat or something along those lines. So your brand has to be built online. So let's take that brand component and divide it up a little bit. Think about a brand like Nike. You look at Nike's Instagram, Nike's Facebook, Nike's YouTube, a Nike shoe or Nike employee, any Nike related, entity, product or image or person, all of those things are, branded in a similar, consistent way. Doesn't matter where you see Nike, it all feels like it's one entity. So that's how I want you guys to think about yourself as your brand. So I see, folks here, I see Jordan, I see Bree, I see Jonathan. All of you will need to start thinking of yourself, your entity as a brand. Now, first of all, where does the online brand start, and why does online matter? Anybody that you will network with, submit your application to, and all that stuff, all of those, opportunities will have hundreds of thousands of people applying. And the first thing the employer is going to do is going to check you online, search you online. And when they search you online, you need to use online, whatever online means, right? And I'll tell you what that means. You need to make sure that you showcase your best brand on those online channels, on those online platforms. So let's start with LinkedIn, which is just table stakes. And I'm not going to spend too much time on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn, obviously you have to have, and I'm sure all of you guys have a LinkedIn, but take your LinkedIn seriously, right? Build a great profile on LinkedIn, have every section filled out, have a beautiful photo with a smile on your face. People love hiring people that are happy people. People don't like to hire people that look like Batman, right? So make sure you do that. Have a great banner in the background, right? So things like that should be consistent. And showcase your personality in your LinkedIn. Don't just make it super professional where you're wearing a suit and a tie and people can't really trust you or connect with you. Have a great bio, have a great summary, all those good things. Now, obviously that's just basic stuff. Most people have a LinkedIn. Where people don't showcase their brand and don't open up their brand profiles is they don't leverage things like Instagram, for hiring purposes. I'm not saying Instagram for personal purposes, for hiring purposes. Instagram is another avenue where you can actually showcase your brand, right? And get recruiters when they search you, find that Instagram and be like, oh my God, look at this. Look how cool this person's life is. Look at all the amazing things she does. Similarly, your Facebook page, similarly, Medium or Twitter or any of these platforms. So these platforms are free to you, right? Make sure you use them and make sure you build a brand around this. So let me give you another bit of an example of what it should be. Let's say you're an amazing snowboarder. You love snowboarding, right? Your brand across all of these platforms should be somewhat related to snowboarding, adventure, and all those things. Just even though you're applying to Goldman Sachs or McKinsey, that doesn't mean your brand needs to change for that. So build a consistent brand around that because people like to hire people that are interesting people. People don't like to hire people that are just like high GPA people. Those days are long gone. So when you look at two resumes, I'll give you an example. At Morgan Stanley, let's say we got two resumes, both from Harvard, for example. One resume had a 4.0 GPA. The other person had a 3.6, 3.7 GPA. But the other person, Jenny, let's just say she was, an avid snowboarder. She was part of like a bunch of different clubs. She started a small Shopify store herself as well. That person is a lot more interesting to hire than the other person. And the reason for that is anybody here who's here can do the job. The job itself isn't hard. It's actually pretty easy, right? All of these jobs are actually easy to do. Now, what do I mean by that? What you're doing in these jobs is you're basically using three tools: Microsoft PowerPoint, and you're moving some logos and objects around it. Microsoft Excel, you're adding some numbers. Everybody can do that. And Microsoft Word, typing some, sentences. So all of you can do that job. And if you don't know how to do that job, they'll teach you how to do that job. So what matters more is this person interesting enough? Is this person exciting enough? Is this the person I want to work with for 18 hours of the day? So make sure use every avenue that's available to you online because that's where you will be searched. Make sure you use it and to showcase all the amazing things you've done. And that becomes your personality. That becomes your persona, right? Now, related to that, the most important searching mechanism, as we all know, is Google. Most people never have searched themselves on Google. Now, I know it sounds pretty weird to do that, but remember, you need to figure that out because the recruiter is going to search you on Google. Type up your name and they're going to see a bunch of articles that pop up. Now, most of us may not even have any article that pops up, but some people do have articles pop up. Some people, Google may search up into your, history and stuff and have some images that pop up. Make sure that stuff is cleansed up. Make sure there's nothing that, hurts your chances. And that's the key part here. Your chances are extremely low of getting a job. And I don't want them to get them to be even lower. So just to give you an idea, for example, Harvard Business School, we've all heard of the number of applicants that they get every year is 10,000, right? But the acceptance rate is less than 10%. Now, we all know HBS is hard to get into, but that's 10%, which is not that bad, actually. Now, let's take Goldman Sachs, for example. Goldman Sachs gets 250,000 applicants a year, and their acceptance rate is less than 3%, right? Now, finally, let's go even further. Let's go Google. Google gets 3 million applicants a year, and the acceptance rate is less than 0.3%. So point is, let's not leave anything to chance. You don't want to have a situation where a recruiter searches you up, finds a bad article or something along those lines, and basically says, you know what, this resume doesn't belong in the next, interview pile. So search yourself on Google. So now you've taken care of the online branding component. Let's move on to the physical, component, which you need to brand, which is your resume. So everybody here has a resume, and I can guarantee you this, and I'm just saying this because I've seen 20,000+ resumes in my life. Your resume is not good. It just isn't. I'll just be honest with you here. And the reason I say that is most people don't take resumes seriously. They'll put a bunch of content in it. They'll, put in their jobs and stuff. And then they'll be like, okay, it has all the information that it needs to have. What they forget is a resume is the most important document of your life. Now, why is it the most important document? Number one reason, it's a living document. It needs to get updated every 3 months, every 6 months to showcase what you've done in the most recent 6 months, right? Or the most recent 6 years, whatever it is. Like the last 6 years of your life, you need to have that incorporated into your resume. But the second most important part, why the resume, or your resume is the most important document you have, it is your salesperson. It represents your brand when you're not there, right? You're not there to pitch yourself to some, recruiter or to some person at KPMG or Deloitte or whatever, because you're just not there. Especially in an online world, you're not going to be there. So your resume has to win that person within 5 seconds. That's all they have. 5 seconds, go through that resume. If they like it enough, you're in the interview pile. If they don't like it enough, you're in the exit pile. These little things matter. Now, what does it mean to make a great resume? Resume, obviously has content in it, but more important than content is how the resume looks. Now, I always tell people recruiting is just like dating. And unfortunately in dating, looks matter. So in recruiting, looks also matter. And the looks in recruiting is your resume. So you got to make your resume look beautiful. Now, there's obviously a ton of formats out there and all that stuff. And I'll share a resume template with you guys later on. Make sure your resume looks crisp and beautiful. And there's a reason for that. When a recruiter looks at your resume, knowing the fact that this is your most important document, if you don't have it look client ready, which is a term used in business, that, hey, is this document client ready? Can I put it in front of a client, right? If your resume doesn't look great, it tells you two things. One, it shows that you can't use Microsoft Word, as well as other people, which is one of the key skills you need to have, right? So that's the first signal that people get. The second signal people get is that, hey, Jenny has a pretty poor looking resume. And if she doesn't even care about her resume, why would she care about a client document she produces for McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley? So that resume is your first project, right? And you want to make sure that it looks great. So I'll share a link with you guys later on, and Bree, later I'll share some links later on that you guys can email to all the folks that are attending, and that should give you a resume course. I have a 90-minute free resume course. Take it. It'll help you, improve your resume, and it starts by deleting your old resume. So delete your old resume, even though I haven't seen any of your old resume. But trust me on this one, just use the advice that I have there. It'll give you the edge. All right, so now that we have the brand done, one part of the online branding, we have the physical branding done, the resume. Now we got to step up our game and make sure our actual Zoom branding is up to par. Those days of meeting someone, wearing a nice suit or looking professional, having nice shoes on, making great eye contact, smiling, those things are unfortunately, not going to happen in the next 6 months because of COVID, right? So everything was going to happen in this Zoom environment. So I need you all to take your Zoom environment super, super seriously, right? Now, here are a few tips that I want you guys to implement to give yourself that extra edge compared to everybody else. So if you look at everybody else in our, if you go to gallery view here, you see everybody has a bunch of different backgrounds. Someone's sitting in their kitchen, someone's mom is in the background making food, I can tell. Like there's all sorts of people here, right? Which is fine, that's cool. But when you're interviewing, I want you guys to make sure you fix all that stuff. So a few tips. Number one, environment, be professional, no sounds, no extra noises. Your puppy shouldn't be running in the background, none of that stuff. Number two, great background, right? So I painted this wall a gray color, but obviously I use this for business, but find a clean wall, right? So I think Lair has a clean, nice looking wall. That's awesome. Have a clean wall behind, put some art on it, look like an Instagram, influencer, whatever. That's totally fine. Makes it look memorable, because someone who interviews you, they will interview another 100 people, and your environment can leave an impact that, hey, Jenny was awesome. Sarah looked pretty good. Steve had a great, situation. He took it professionally. Number three, face a light, meaning a window. Window is the best natural light, and everybody mostly has a window in their house or in their apartment. Face the window, it gives you really nice natural lighting. So right now I have a light going on. It's an electric light, but generally speaking, I don't use that because I have a window that's behind my camera. And that just gives you a really nice natural light. Most people have, lights on the ceiling, which gives you really bad shadows and stuff. Don't do that, right? Try to get just face a window if you can. That's the easiest way to do it. Final piece of advice on that, try to invest if you can. If you already have it, that's awesome. Try to invest in a better webcam. And if even better, if you have a DSLR at home, use that for your Zoom setup, right? So for example, in this situation, I'm using my Zoom setup camera. If I switch it to my, basic MacBook camera, right? This is what I switch off to, right? So it becomes just like everybody else, doesn't give any edge. It's not angled properly, all those things. But if I switch it to a professional looking thing, it just makes it more crisp. Everything looks a little bit more centered. things like that. Little things like that matter because it sets you apart from the million other people that are applying for the same job. And I'm just trying to give you that extra edge on each step of the way. Finally, on the Zoom setup, look, when you're meeting someone in person, you make great eye contact and you smile. You need to do the same thing with Zoom. So most people, when they interview, over Zoom, they don't look in the lens. They look in the monitor. I don't want you to do that. Don't look in the screen. Look in the lens. So what I want you to do is take a Post-it note and draw an arrow on it, face it towards the lens, and say, "Look here." Okay, so that should be one thing that you should definitely do. And take another Post-it note and draw a smile on it and put it on the other side of the lens. So those two things will remind you during every interview that you got to look in the lens. Don't look at the monitor. Look in the lens all the time and smile as much as possible. People love hiring people that are happy people, exciting people versus people that are strict, under stress, under pressure. And smiling will help you, reduce that stress and make you feel a lot more welcome. All right. So we got the branding done. That piece is done. Now you've taken care of that piece. Now you move on to the next piece, which is framework. So framework for me is super, super important. And that is framing yourself, right? And I want everybody to do this practice as you finish this talk today. Knowing who you are, and especially knowing what you like and what you dislike, is extremely important. On top of that, knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at is also very, very important. So there's a list that I want you to make after this talk, which is a list of things you love to do, you like doing, and things you hate doing, right? And I want you to make this list once every year. What this list will do is you'll have about 5 to 10 items on things you love doing and 5 to 10 items of things you don't like doing. And then next year, when you don't revisit that list, make a new list next year. Maybe it has some things that you bring in from the year before, but try to make a new list every year. The benefit of making this list is when new opportunities come up or when you seek opportunities, you will actually refer back to that list in your mind. And if there's an opportunity, for example, which is, falling pretty closely into the things you don't like to do, it's very easy for you to say, no, this is not for me. I want to do the other things. So what I want to do now is I'll read you a couple of items on my list, and it'll give you an idea of how I make decisions from it before we move on. So for example, this is a list that I made earlier this year, and it's just in my journal. It says things that I love to do and things that I hate doing. So things that I love to do, the first one is motivating people, helping them, sharing my thoughts, building things, getting into places I don't belong in, right? I love that one. Making money and spending on people that I love, right? Thinking outside the box, being around positive people. That's just my list. It doesn't say, oh, I love using Excel, or I love doing this and that. I like nice cars, or any of that stuff. It's basically core things that you love doing. And then if you read some of the points on my things I hate to do, I have things like working on projects I'm not passionate about, working with structured people, working in environments with red tape, right? So there's a bunch of those things. So point is, now what happens is, let's just say McKinsey calls me and says, hey, Sherjan, we have an opportunity in Singapore. We want you to be a director of blah, blah, blah. Would you want to come? Quickly, I will be like, okay, McKinsey, structured people, lots of red tape, not a lot of creativity anymore at that stage, just wear a nice suit and go work. Not for me, right? So it's very easy for you to then decide if it's good for you or not, right? Similarly, this list can help you make decisions faster in a lot of other things, right? Hey, Jenny, do you want to make an investment in this project? Okay, what would that require? Is it exciting? Is it, am I passionate about it? Would I wake up happy for it? Is this something that I love doing? Okay, cool. Let's double down on that. So make that list. It'll take you 5 minutes to make this. It'll help you make your decisions, and it'll help you, give you clarity as you make those decisions. Now, as you get older, this list refines, and what you'll realize is, as you get older, the things you love doing becomes smaller and smaller. That list becomes shorter and shorter, and things you hate doing becomes larger and larger. And that's a good thing, right? Because as you get older, you start understanding, what do you actually love doing? But in parallel to this, you need to also understand, what are you good at and what do you, are not good at. The quicker you realize what are you not good at is good. I don't want you to go and improve that thing. Basically, ultimately, over time, what you want to end up doing in your career is things you love doing and things you're great at combined. That's the sweet spot, right? So the quicker you can get to that point, then that's where happiness lies, right? And this is nothing to do with money and all those other things. So for example, when I was an analyst in investment banking, most analysts, when they leave investment banking, they end up going to private equity. But to be a private equity associate, you need to be really good with technical skills, LBO modeling, all those other things. But I knew I'm not good at, technical skills. I'm okay, I'm average at technical skills, right? But I'm better at the other stuff, qualitative, positioning, those kind of things, strategy. So because I know that, then I know that KKR, TPG, Bain Capital, some of these big private equity firms are not going to be a good fit for me. So I'm not even going to waste my efforts towards that. All right. So that's framework. I want you guys to frame yourself to figure out who you guys really are and then go from there. So next piece is exploration. So right now, most of you guys are pretty young, right? So you're in school, you're studying, you're getting an education, all that. This is the best time to, explore a career, right? Now, what does that mean? Life has 3 stages, in my opinion. First stage is exploration stage, right? That's when you're 18 years old, all the way up to 28, 30 years old. The whole idea of exploration stage is you're basically trying a bunch of different things. And the one example I give people is imagine yourself as being an alien who just landed on planet Earth, has never tasted ice cream, and goes into a Haagen-Dazs store and there's 30 flavors. So you're like, I don't know what these things are. So then you take a spoon and you try each one. Only then will you know which flavor is somewhat nice, and you lean in and you dig more. So I want you to have that same mentality while you're in undergrad or while you're in college, because when you're in college, this is the best time for you to try as many things as possible. And trust me, there are no wrong steps, and I'll tell you why in a second. You need to go and explore as much as possible early on in your career. Now, when you finish the first 10 years of your career and you're 28, 29, that's when you want to go pro. Going pro basically means you're going deep into one of the flavors that you really liked. It's kind of like when you're in the NBA, you're playing for some school, then you get drafted in one of the teams. And then that team, you basically say, I'm going to learn as much as I can about this sport in the next 10 years and become a really good player in this sport. So that's the second phase of your career, which is where you pick one and you go deep into that field. And you're not going to have that until you're 28, 29. Then the third phase of the career, which where I am not in right now, but the point is when you get to it, let's just say it's at 40 years old, that's when you become the Michael Jordan of that sport. Right? You basically say, I want to become the world's expert at this. So right now in your first stage, exploration phase. Now, exploration phase starts with many different things. But what I want you to understand is this. Most people, what they do is they look at everybody around them and they say, hey, Jimmy is going to Goldman Sachs. Maybe I should go to Goldman Sachs, right? Oh, my mom wants me to go to like Harvard Business School. Maybe I should go to business school right after. Now, those are all other people's opinions. And mostly there's other people's decisions that are based on lack of advice, lack of mentorship, and mostly based on herd mentality, right? Don't follow herd mentality. It's okay to have it as one part of your exploration phase to go explore those avenues, but that shouldn't be where you spend most of your effort. Most of your effort while you're in college is to explore as many options as possible. And the best way to explore options is to go meet people in different industries, different verticals, different geographies. So let's say all of you guys here are focused on, say, investment banking or consulting or accounting. Those 3 industries are obviously where everybody wants to go. That's fine. You should go add them into your exploration map, right? Your landscape of opportunities you want to look at. But also add in technology, tech companies, large tech companies, including small tech companies, right? And you're not like going and getting an internship there. You're going to spend a little bit of time trying to meet people from those industries to see what's up with those industries. Similarly, so basically what you're doing here is you're not only going horizontal, you're going vertical. So vertical basically means let's take investment banking for a second. Best investment banking brand, Goldman Sachs, right? Globally. Obviously, everybody wants to work there, but keep on coming down the food chain as well, right? Don't just keep yourself limited to the opportunities in exploration mode. Maybe you'll love working at a small boutique investment bank that is only 10 people versus working at Goldman Sachs where you're just a number in a 20,000 person company. So in university, your job needs to be building a massive landscape of potential opportunities for yourself and tasting a little bit of each. Now, that's going vertical, meaning tier 1 brands all the way to tier 3 brands, for example. Then going horizontal means you want to add additional verticals. Even though you may be interested in consulting, go meet a couple of people who are doing finance. Go meet a couple of people who are doing accounting. Go meet a couple of people who are in tech, big tech, small tech, all that stuff. Go meet people in the mining world. You guys have a bunch of that sector around you. Now, you're not joining any of this. On top of that, as you go horizontal, you must go international, right? Just because you're in Canada, which is awesome, don't just point towards the US and say, that's my only opportunity. There's amazing jobs and opportunities in Hong Kong, Singapore, China, Australia, New Zealand, all of these places, London. Add that to your landscape of ice creams that you need to try and taste, right? So that's called exploration phase. And I want you to build this map for yourself. Don't just let ego take over or herd mentality take over or what parents want you to take over and just be super limited to what you want, because most likely you're not going to get that job. Right? Because the chances are just so low. But what I don't want is you be left without a job when you graduate. So Moving from there, on the exploration part, the next phase is spreading the brand that you've built. So you've done a bunch of homework. You got your brand built up. You've built a framework about what you love to do and what you hate doing and what you're good at and what you're not good at. Then you've built a landscape about, hey, what are all the potential opportunities that I think could be interesting? Now I need to dig in a little bit and get some learning. This is where you need to start spreading that brand that you've built. Spreading the brand historically was, you would have info sessions, coffee chats, those kind of things. Not going to happen anymore, right? So what you need to do is use the best tool available to you, and that is cold emailing, right? So what I want you to do is learn how to cold email properly. I'll give you guys a couple of tips on how to do that. The first step of cold emailing is you need to go get access to the alumni directory for your university. People who have been in your shoes, are older than you now, but are in industry. You guys are not the first people from this university trying to break into a tier 1 firm. Everybody above you and ahead of you had the same dreams, and some of them broke through. And I've met so many students in my life who say, hey, Sherjan, I've emailed everybody already. I'm like, no, you didn't email me, right? I didn't get an email yet. So how can you, coming from University of Toronto, say that you've emailed? I'm one of the only people from University of Toronto who've broken into some of these industries. I didn't get an email. So if I didn't get an email and I'm so public about it, who did you email? So go get access to the alumni directory. Even if you have to pay an alumni to get that, go do it. That directory has all the people that have graduated from this university, their email address and where they work. Now, if you can't get access to that, no worries. You can just search up your university on LinkedIn and specific industry, and everybody who's updated their LinkedIn will show up if they've been there. When you get access to that, your job is to just get 10 to 15 minutes of their time. And remember, based on the exploration phase you did before about all industries, not just the industry and the tiers that you only wanted to work at, every piece of it. So what you do is, this is how you write a cold email. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of sentences. Cold emails are super, super short, right? First of all, it's very easy to guess anybody's email address. first.lastname@thatcompany.com, generally speaking. If it's not that, it's first letter, last name @gmail.com or @company.com. So guessing someone's email address is super, super straightforward. Put that email address in, put a subject line, which is something that is connecting both of you. So it could be, university, the club, maybe both of you grew up in the same town, you've done some due diligence. And then this is how the email starts. Hi, Rebecca. My name is Jenny, and I'm a rising senior or rising junior at, University of Alberta studying XYZ. Came across your contact information in the alumni directory and wanted to reach out to you to connect with you for potential opportunities at KPMG. I know you're extremely busy with all the stuff that's going on, but I'd love to get 10 minutes of your time to ask very specific questions about the industry and a potential role. Thanks so much. My resume is attached. All the best, right? You send that email out and that's it. That's cold emailing. And you'll send 100 of these out and you'll get one reply. That's just how the numbers work. So 99 emails never get replied. But remember, 100% of these emails get read, right? And you will have to, take it on your own to spread your brand as much as possible. This needs to be part of your routine on a daily basis. Now, let's make it a rule that every day for the next 6 months, you're going to email 5 to 10 people every day. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter how senior they are, how junior they are, they're CEOs, whatever they are, you will email them, right? And you will not have that fear that, hey, what if she doesn't reply to me? What happens then? Nothing. Your life remains the same, right? Nobody will ever be like, how dare she emailed me? I'm going to go find who this person is. That's not going to happen, right? So don't be scared that someone's not going to reply to you. Rejection is just part of the game. Now, to convert rejections into potential, return emails or replies is 3 or 4 days later, you write a second email, right? A shorter, even shorter email. Hey, Rebecca, Jenny here again. I know you're extremely busy, but just following up on my email from last week or a few days ago, would love to connect if you have 10, 15 minutes, whenever possible. Thanks again. Attach your resume again and send it out. Remember why you're attaching your resume, because it's your brand representation. It's an awesome document. It's going to kick ass compared to every other person who's trying to cold email this person. So those second emails will convert most, if you had 99%, if you had a 1% hit rate before, now your hit rate is going to be about 30 to 40%. Second emails always give you a big impact. Either people come back and say, hey, sorry, I can't help you, I'm busy. Or some people be like, yeah, sure, happy to help. Pick a time, let's go from there. Try a third time. After 3 tries, move on. No need to, focus on that person. That person's not going to reply to you. There's enough other people out there, literally hundreds of thousands of people out there that you should be cold emailing. So spread your brand. When you do get a conversation with these people, this is where you're going to go learn. This is where you're going to really figure out, hey, is this for me? And this is where, when you meet them, don't ask stupid questions like, oh, what do you think of the Chinese economy's impact on the Canadian economy? That's not going to help. What you need to be focused on is asking them about the job. Hey, what do you love about the job? What do you hate about the job? I've seen that you work here and here. Why? What is different about this? Be very curious, because when you're young and don't know much, that's when you're curious, and you should be inquisitive about these kind of things. Ask these questions and build a mental map for yourself about seeing your landscape that you built earlier and layering on top of the framework that you have about yourself, and see if things jive. Someone says, hey, there's a million red tape here because that's corporate politics. Maybe I don't want to work there. Oh, here's a great place where it's going to be super creative, but it's a super small team. Oh, that sounds good. Okay, let's double check on that one, right? So that's how you start figuring out, okay, here's where I want to focus myself. Here's when I put my efforts around. So start spreading that brand. And in any of these conversations, if you do convert from email conversations to actual Zoom conversations, they see that you're a high quality candidate. You're really, prepped, you have a professional setting, great resume, all those things, and you're asking good questions. That's when you can then actually ask them, be like, hey, Jenny, thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. I know you may be running recruiting later on. I would love to put my name in the hat for a potential opportunity or for the internship that's coming up. If it's okay, would you be okay with supporting my candidacy, right? Have that confidence to ask questions like that. What's the worst they can say, right? There's only 3 options. Someone can say yes, happy to help, but that can also mean no. They're not really going to help, but they'll say yes. Someone can say no. That's awesome. It's a quick no. Hey, no, I can't help you. You're not that good. No worries. I appreciate you, taking this time. Or someone can say yes, and they actually help. They take your resume, they put it on top of the pile, and you have skipped all the red tape and the HR, abyss, on this recruiting process. So that's spreading the brand. Every job that I've gotten in my life has been through cold emailing. Every investment that I have made when I was at Google was through cold emailing. And every funding that I have raised, each dollar that I've raised for my startups recently has been through cold emailing angel investors and people. So email is your top tool. Use it, right? And abuse it and use it so much that you're running out of email addresses. All right, so that's going to be spreading the brand, right? And so now you've done a bunch of stuff and you're already ahead of 99% of people, right? Because you're on people's radars. And one thing I'll just add to that, I know we're running a little bit over time, but one thing I just want to add to that, why it matters in terms of spreading brand wide and across all firms. Most people, what they say is like, oh, I just want to work at Goldman Sachs and everything else is beneath me. That's wrong, right? Right now, again, like I said, it's tough times, right? And you need to get yourself in the ballpark, at least at a minimum. If you want to get to the home plate, that can come later, right? So if you want to get that interview at Goldman Sachs, just applying to Goldman Sachs is not going to get you that interview. If you look at the spectrum of things, Goldman Sachs is a tier 1 firm, Morgan Stanley is tier 1, JP Morgan, Credit Suisse. Then you go to tier 2 firms, right? Let's just say there's a bunch of like Deutsche Banks, are tier 2. I would say Credit Suisse is tier 2. Let's just say that's not that they're bad. They're just ranked that way. Then let's say tier 3, RBC, Scotiabank, CIBC, a bunch of Canadian banks, a bunch of Eastern European banks, stuff like that. And you go down that list and you have boutique banks, then you have no-name banks, all that stuff. If you really want that interview at Goldman Sachs, you can't just focus on that. What you need to do is spread that net wide and start, knocking on doors of all these other firms. And what's going to happen is, think about the competition. Everybody's emailing the Goldman Sachs MD, right? But nobody's emailing this no-name bank's MD. But when you get that interview or get that opportunity, that's one, check the box. You have one thing that's happened in this whole spectrum. You can take that as soon as you get that interview, you can let the other banks know, hey, by the way, I have an interview with Stevens and Jacobs, investment firm. So maybe some other firm says, okay, cool, you have that, we'll give you an interview as well. Suddenly you start getting some interviews here. When you start getting some interviews here, you keep on messaging Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley and Credit Suisse and RBC, hey, guys, I have interviews here, I'm almost in the second round. Then those people are like, okay, fine, we'll give you an interview. So you'll get an interview there. So as you basically make everybody work against each other, so firms start having FOMO around the candidate, right? Again, recruiting is just like dating, right? So this is the way you have to date a bunch of people, and then the person that you actually like starts getting more interested in you. So then what happens is you keep on moving this spectrum up, suddenly you get an offer at a tier 2 firm. As soon as you get that offer, you let every other firm know, hey, by the way, I have an offer from the street, right? Give me a shot at least at a final round. So then maybe one of these firms gives you. So you can't apply solo pressure to one firm. You have to apply pressure to an entire spectrum and move that entire spectrum together up slowly, and all in parallel. So just to give you an idea a little bit about my career path, even though I've given you the best of the best parts of my career, let me tell you how it started. So when I was in freshman year in undergrad, my first job was at a chicken restaurant flipping burgers in the summer. That was my summer internship. Then I interned as a security guard. You know, when you go to a university library, you see the person who's swiping people in. That was my second job, full time, as in for 4 months. Then I worked at a nuclear power plant in Toronto, right? So I was an engineering intern there. Then I joined Accenture in their IT consulting, not even strategy consulting, didn't get a return offer. Then I worked at RBC on the trade floor and capital markets doing algorithmic trading. Then I joined as an advisory firm for free, unpaid internship during my business school internship. Then I joined Houlihan Lokey, then Morgan Stanley, then Google, then Morgan Stanley, right? So even though you want to work at Goldman Sachs today or McKinsey today, whatever, I get that, but you got to be long-term greedy, right? Your job should be, let's just inch forward one step at a time, stay motivated, keep focused on the long-term goal, you'll get there. So don't be short-term greedy about these things because it's just not going to help you. All right, finally, guys, preparation. You need to prepare for these interviews because when you get this shot of getting an interview, you've already beaten 90% of the competition, right? So getting that interview was the big part. Now, once you're in that hot seat, your resume doesn't matter, right? Where you went to school doesn't matter. Your GPA doesn't matter. All those things have been canceled out. All that matters is you, real time in that hot seat. And you need to win that. You need to convert that. So most people, what they do is when they get these interviews or they're preparing for these interviews, they put 90% of their time and effort around technical interview prep. So they'll go learn accounting, they'll go learn case studies, they'll go learn valuation, financial analysis, DCFs, all this good stuff. That's fine, but the issue is, you're basically learning how to do the job. And nobody gets the job because they know how to do the job, especially in these industries. Why? Because most people hire people not because they can do the job. The job itself is easy, and you yourself are very, very smart for doing this job, right? What they hire people for are all the other things. If you didn't know the job, like I said before, they'll teach you how to do the job, right? So don't spend all this time trying to learn how to do the job. Focus more time on trying to figure out how to get the job. And how do you get the job? Is by convincing someone else that you are the right person for this job. How do you convince someone? With the right stories, with right, eye contact, with a smile, showing a great personality, showing a personality that's willing to learn, showing a personality that's not all about like, oh, I know it all and I'm such a hot stud that I want to get this job. No, you're someone who is humble, willing to work hard, understands the pros and cons of the industry, understands it's going to be hard. You're a team player. So those answers to those questions, the behavioral answers, the soft skill answers, those are the answers that will get you the job. Because people want to hire someone who's interesting, is a good person, has great story from how they got from wherever to wherever they are today. Those are the things you need to be focused on. So to prepare for that, so let's divide this up. I would spend 80 to 90% of your time preparing your behavioral answers, right? The same way, why people like you in your social setting is because you are good. It's not about the skills you have. People don't like you for that. Same thing happens in professional settings, especially as a junior person, because you don't really have that many skills. So focus on preparing questions like, tell me about yourself, why this industry, why this firm, what are your weaknesses, what are your strengths, why should I not hire you, tell me about a time you had a conflict at work, all of these things. These are the questions that will define you, right? Whereas the technical stuff, yes, get it done, spend a weekend on it, maybe a week on it, just check the box, understand the basics of it, right? Because you can always learn it and they'll teach you. First month of any job is they're going to train you. So I'll share some links on all of that stuff. I have a course that teaches behavioral stuff. There are enough courses out there for technical stuff. Take a technical stuff, even the stuff you learn in class should be good enough for technical. Spend more time on behavioral, spend more time doing mock interviews with your friends and family, just so you can get that, spiced up. So when you do get to the spot where you're in the hot seat, people are like, oh my God, Jenny was awesome. You loved everything about her. She had the right strategies, eloquent answers, concise, smiled all the time, happy, energetic. That's going to win you the job, because ultimately hiring is a people business, right? And it's people to people relationships. You need to win that. All right. So those are all the things that I had in terms of content. What I want to do next is I'll go into questions that people have asked me, and there's a ton of questions we have. So we can do live questions first. Bree and Lear, you want to kind of start it off, and then I can quickly go through. There's literally a ton of questions here. So what I'll do is, let me actually just figure out how to get to these. All right, here we go. So what we'll do is I'll go through questions that we have here, and then I can answer live questions. If someone has a live question, you can just jump on the mic and go to town.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe what I'll say is if you do have any questions, just because Sherjan already has so many, maybe just put them in the chat below, write them down. And also if Sherjan can't get to all of your questions today, I'm sure he's more than happy to be emailed these questions, right, Sherjan?
No, No, I'm kidding. Yeah, sure.
Fantastic.
What do you mean?
Great. So yeah,
Who uses email these days? All right. Well, let's do this, right? So I'll start with a bunch of questions. I want to make sure I cover everything. I'm not in any rush, by the way. I talk fast. I don't have my next meeting isn't until 8:30. So we have time. So we'll go through this. And those people who are bored and they're like, you know what, I can't handle this bald guy. Just, no worries. I don't mind you guys. I hear you. So you guys can always eject this. So this is a free period for you guys to answer me anything. So, okay. So here we go. The first question that I have here is, what do you predict will happen to the economy and the employment rates coming up? So my opinion is the economy is going to take at least another 12 months minimum to couple back with the market, right? So you're not going to, these things are just long format events that happen, and they're coupled with a lot of different things. So for example, let's say you stop buying products from China. Those companies that make those products, those factories make those products with a lot of smaller pieces. Those micro factories don't work anymore. They don't have business. Supply chain falls through. All the business that are marketing and legal and law that are connected with it don't, provide business. So ultimately, everybody who's involved in that entire supply chain ends up not having a job. And then what happens is people need to pay their rent. Those people end up getting jobs elsewhere in a restaurant or mall or whatever it is. So ultimately, it has a massive shock in the actual fundamental economy of the country. So this thing is going to, last for a while, and it's going to slowly come back up. So I would not be, one of the things I tell students is like, don't wait for the market conditions to improve because you can't control that. Only focus on what you can do right now. So the best thing you can do is prep yourself, and also on top of that, build something. This is the best time for you guys to build something, right? You have so much time at home. Any passion that you have. If you love dancing, start creating a dancing YouTube channel. I don't care. If you love designing, sell t-shirts on Shopify. Learn a new skill, right? So I've started small businesses all the time, and all of you are more creative than I am. And I think you guys can do this, especially you guys are the TikTok generation. So that's what I would recommend. What do you consider the best asset one can have and display in an interview? The best asset is a smile, right? People love happy people, so make sure you use that. Why is networking so important? Because it's a people business. Life is a people business. You can't go at it alone, and you will need to network over a long period of time, all right? All right, so let's answer live questions. I'll do these types of questions, and I'll do a live question right there. How do you recommend I leverage experience within a Big Four to get into a tier 1 investment bank? So if you're in a Big Four, so with these investment banks and stuff, it's a very structured recruiting process. Even with consulting, they hire at a certain point in people's lives. So what happens in that situation is if you are already graduated or if you are an intern, obviously get a return offer if you're an intern. But if you've already graduated and you're working in Big Four, then your only chance to get back into investment banking is usually after an MBA or a business school degree. So my recommendation is, if you are already in those industries, make sure you get a return offer, right? If you're an intern, if you have that, network as much as possible to switch over. Look, I was in Accenture, didn't get a return offer and still made it, but I had to take a detour to get a master's degree to get access to recruiters one more time because they're very specific about when they hire. In an interview, how would you respond? Questions like, what are some of your weaknesses? Look, the best weaknesses are the weaknesses that are apparent weaknesses, not the weaknesses that are made up. A lot of people come up with these weaknesses like, oh, I sometimes take on too much on myself. I focus on a lot of, projects at the same time, and then I lose sight. No, those are not real weaknesses. Real weaknesses are things that are already apparent on your resume. So for example, you see a resume. So for example, this accounting question, if you're interviewing for investment banking, you can say, hey, one of my weaknesses, John, is that I've only worked in accounting for the last couple of years. Now that may come across as a weakness, but I've actually taken a lot of effort in taking some courses on by myself, networking with the right people and understanding what the job requires. So even though I'm not as, perfect as other candidates that are sitting in the waiting room, but I know I can hit the ground running, and it may take me a couple of weeks to ramp up, but that's my one apparent weakness. So that way, what you're saying is the person knows you have a bunch of weaknesses. They're going to take that and they're going to convert it, and they're going to say, okay, I believe that. That's a true answer. Authenticity always wins. All right, next question. What advice would you give a first-year business student? So if you're, early on in your career, go explore, go bug people, network with them, meet them, ask them dumb questions. Ask them, what do you love about your job? What do you hate about your job? If they're even open to it, I would even ask them, hey, do you mind if I can come spend 4 hours at your work with you just one day? I just want to see what you do, right? Get that. And a lot of the big companies won't let you do that, obviously, but smaller companies would. Startups, tech firms, they'll let you do a day at the site. Do that. So that would be my best advice. And this is the best time. Like, you're not going to be in school again, most likely. That's just how it is. So, take advantage of that. What skills from sales and trading translate into IB and consulting? Not many. It's very hard to go from sales and trading to consulting, generally speaking, later on in your career if you're doing full time. Early on, it's easier, right? If you're done a second year or third year internship in sales and trading and you go into investment banking, consulting, that's fine. But if you're a full-time sales and trading, very few people transition to IBD because this skill set that you need for IBD is a little bit different, where you need to be super good with Excel modeling. On sales and trading, you're doing a lot of different things where you're handling sales and trading systems and platforms, but you're not really doing analytical stuff. But I think overall, working in a fast-paced environment is what sales and trading is all about, which is relevant to investment banking. Working with live, sensitive data, sensitive client data, obviously is important. Large numbers, you're working with a lot of obviously financial information. That's that's helpful. And finally, like you're in that culture of execution. Sales and trading is all about execution. You have a deal, you have a trade that needs to be done, you have a client that needs to buy 100 million shares or whatever, you're making that happen. That's what investment banking is also, right? You have a large M&A transaction that needs to get done in the next 6 months. That needs to happen. So those are some of the skills that I would recommend you should focus on. All right, let's move on to live questions. How did you get into UCLA Masters with a 3.0 GPA? Yeah, so I didn't get in first. I got waitlisted, right? Because I also had a low GMAT, 680. But this is where I tell you, your email is your best friend. So I emailed the dean of UCLA Business School and said, hey, look, I may look dumb on resume, but I have done all these amazing other things. And this is one of the lessons that I have for you guys. Even though I had a 3.0 GPA, I did a lot of other things on my resume that made me an interesting candidate. Meaning, I started a photography business in my sophomore year, and that photography business became big enough where I paid for my student loans. Most other students didn't have that. So I've always had an entrepreneurial gene in me, and doing things that are a little bit like, oh, how are you going to do that? So point is, that GPA, even though those numbers were small and they didn't define me, the other stuff made me more interesting. So then they put me off the wait list when they said, okay, can you improve your GPA in your final semester? Because I still had one more semester left of University of Toronto. So I basically dropped all of my hobbies, and for 4 months, which was the final semester, I crushed it, and I got like a 3.7 or 3.8 GPA in the final semester. So you can imagine that my GPA was even lower than 3.0 before that final semester, right? So point is, when that happened, I had convinced them to be like, hey, look, at least I'm not that dumb. I mean, I can do this stuff. The second piece was they said, hey, can you get an internship before the UCLA Masters begin? So then I basically networked as much as possible. And a buddy of mine who worked at RBC, they came up with an internship for me, which was just for those 4 months. Convinced them to hire me for 4 months. And I said, okay, only 4 months, and I'll help you with programming on the algorithmic trading side. That's how I got those two requirements filled. And that's when I got off the wait list and they let me in. But remember, all of these things are 50% based on luck. There was a very high chance I wasn't going to get into UCLA, but then I would try something else, right? So that would be my answer to that. You say we are in the experimental tasting phase. What if we find an excellent position right away? How long should we stay before leaving? So you shouldn't think about leaving at all, right? Go in and try as much as you can. One of the things I always tell people is always be grateful, but never be satisfied, right? Be grateful for where you are, what you have, consume as much as you can from it. The day you start waking up unhappy and that, feeling continues for a long time, that's when you start thinking, right? For example, when I got promoted to vice president at Morgan Stanley, I was very happy, right? You get more money, you wear nice suits, all that good stuff. But at some point that all goes away. You're kind of like, what am I actually doing, right? What am I actually building here? Am I just signing documents every day? Who am I working for here, right? And is money what makes me happy? So ultimately, my rule for myself is, when you wake up in the morning every day, are you excited to get up and go and do whatever you're supposed to do? Or you're kind of like, oh shit, I gotta go, right? Do this job for whoever. So that's one thing that I think as you get older, you'll start realizing. And this, and the sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll find your passion. So at Houlihan Lokey, which was my dream job back then, when I was like 3-4 months in, I realized that I wasn't happy because we weren't doing the work that I wanted to do in investment banking, which is why then I tried my best to lateral to a better firm. I just got lucky that I ended up going to Morgan Stanley, right? So this is the way I want you guys to, if you get a great job today, go crush it. Be so happy that, hey, I'm going to build all of my life and my career here. But start noticing your morning habits, right? When you sit in the train in the morning to go to work, or you're driving to work, or you're walking to work, whatever you're doing, are you smiling? Are you happy? Are you excited? So for example, today, when I was, getting ready for this talk, I was pretty excited, right? I was really excited. I was like, oh, you know what? This is gonna be fun. I'm gonna meet some more Canadians, some cool kids who are gonna do cool things. I'm not getting paid for this, so I'm happy. So point is, find whatever that is for you, and then you'll be able to do well. Okay, so I've answered this question. What is the best way to get started in building a network with people in the industry? Cold emailing and alumni list. Okay, here we go. Sorry, guys, I'm just gonna open this. Do you have any advice how to build your career and set goals for yourself? I think we covered that. Do you have any advice on how to constantly seek self-improvement effectively, efficiently, consistently? I think one of the best things you guys can do is to get a mentor early on, right? Find people who are a year or older than you and seek their guidance, listen to them and really understand what they're saying and try to apply a little bit at a time. That's one of the best ways for you to improve yourself. When I was young, your age, I was pretty bad at, getting mentorship because I thought that I was, really good at what I did, right? So when I was in high school, I had one of the highest grades in all of Ontario. So when I went to engineering, I just had this mentality, oh, I'm going to crush engineering. What's engineering? I can do this shit. And then I got my first exam back and I failed miserably. Right? I got a 45% and I thought I got a 95%. That was the audacity I had. So I wish I had a mentor early on to keep me on track. So find someone who is not you and who can see you from the third person perspective and really cares about your success, and listen to them. So I started finding good mentors when I joined Morgan Stanley, and some of the MDs really liked me because they saw themselves in me a little bit or whatever it was, and they got me on track a little bit better. Then Google, I found my really awesome mentor who's a partner there, and he basically further refined me. And I still now, if I look back to myself 10 years ago, I'm a very different person. And I hope you guys can get to your best self as early as possible. And the best way to do that is to get a mentor who can see you from the outside. All right, so let's move on to live questions. When talking about our experiences, how do we balance between discussing volunteering, work, and academics? I don't have a good answer for that. I would just say, Jonathan, I think academics is less relevant. The reason is everybody who's in this chat is doing the same academic stuff. They go to the same university, get a similar degree, and have a number that says, here's your GPA. I would focus less on that because that's just something that's a given. Focus more on the volunteering and the work, but focus more on things that are uniquely you. So when I had an interview, when I was your age and stuff, majority of my interviews were based on my photography business, right? And the best part of that was because I started that was individually, uniquely me, right? Like, how did you get these customers? How did you get this market share? How did you get this revenue? How do you learn how to do, professional photography, including weddings and engagements and baby showers and whatnot, right? All that stuff, even graduation photos. So figure out something that you are uniquely good at and build that part of your story. And that is going to resonate with the person who's interviewing you. Then when I got my interview at Morgan Stanley, the entire interview was built upon how does someone who's never been to Harvard and all that stuff is teaching courses and workshops at Harvard, right? And that was my workshop, this thing, which I started 10 years ago. And then the same interview was at Google. Google didn't care about my experience at Morgan Stanley because everybody who they were interviewing was from Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs and JPM, right? But they were interested more about okay, tell me more about this thing that's you started from scratch. So, find some of those things. And if it's volunteering, which obviously is unique, build it around that. Can you give an example of cold contact LinkedIn message? So LinkedIn, I would avoid in terms of messaging people. LinkedIn is more of a directory, less of a network, right? Actually, nobody that I know in the industry replies to LinkedIn messages. Some may, most people hate LinkedIn in terms of a communication tool. So use LinkedIn to research people, to figure out who they are, where they've worked, understand, research them, due diligence on them, all that stuff. Don't message people on it. Find their email and message that, because email goes straight to your inbox and people check their inbox regularly every day. So your chance of getting a reply is 100 times more. How do I follow up after an interview to ensure I get the job? So look, if you have to follow up, there's a high chance you didn't get the job, right? So my recommendation is if you are following up, wait for a week and just shoot a note. Hey, just wanted to get an update, but don't seem like, hey, you're, desperate, or you're like, hey, I don't know what the result is. Don't do that, because someone who really likes you and stuff, they will hire you. If you're going to get the job, you're going to get the job within a couple of days. So my recommendation is just wait a week just to get an update on the process. If there's no update or reply, just move on. It just means that, they've hired someone else, most likely for these top firms. All right, moving on. As someone who has always had a difficult time recruiting and feels at a disadvantage for not having relevant pre-COVID experience, how can I apply to positions in competitive industries? So look, no experience is normal. Everybody starts with no experience, right? I got rejected by McDonald's with no experience, right? So I think you guys will be fine. I wouldn't be too worried about it. That's just nature of where you are. It seems like a big thing early on in your career because you're like, oh, they want 2 years experience, but I have 0. What is going on? But remember, as time goes by, that problem will just go away. It's not going to be a thing. So just focus on not the fact that you don't have any experience historically, just focus on the things that you can actually do, which is prepare and apply and network. Those are the things you should focus on. People who love you and like you will take care of you. All right, let's move on to the next question. What an interview looks like. They're getting bored or not interested. How would you try to engage them without being too informal? I think like if someone's bored and not interested in you, that's a clear sign they don't want to work, want to hire you. And that's a good sign for you don't want to work for them. If someone doesn't give you an equal return and they're not passionately excited about you joining them, you don't want to work for them either. So those clear signals are a great way for you to get a initial signal and just accept the fact this is not going to work out and just going to clear your losses early and just move on. Don't try to bring life into that because it's not going to happen. People make their opinion about people within the first 2 minutes, right? Which is why the first question people ask is like, hey, tell me about yourself, is the most important question people ask, right? And that's the most important answer you have to give. So I wouldn't try to revive energy. I would just take it and take your losses and move on. How can I offer value to industry professionals? You can't, unfortunately, because you're too young, very inexperienced. Use these moments for 10, 15 minutes to just learn what they love and what they don't like. And then if there's an opportunity in firms, ask them if you really want to work for that person and it's not a big company, always say, hey, I'm happy to work for free, volunteer with you. Can I come do a small 2-week internship with you? That's one of the best ways. And just make it seem like, hey, I just want to come hover you and learn from you. That's one of the best ways you can add value. And then whatever they ask you to do, from bringing the coffee to printing books to whatever it is, you can do that. All right, what's the next question? Thank you so much. Oh, okay, cool. Is there any books you would recommend to help? My only book I would recommend to people is How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? That's one book it's a book that teaches you how to do human. So learn how to do human, and that's the best way to get this stuff. All right, so quickly going through others. Do you need internships with an investment bank before your junior year? No, you don't. Junior year internship is the most important. Any internship before that, just try to get the best brand you can get. So if you get an internship at Amazon as a sophomore or as a freshman, that's awesome. It's a big global brand, right? More brands early on in your life will give you better brands when you graduate. Once you get those better brands, that gives you credibility. That credibility leans into then you building your own brand. Okay. How has your career led to your current position? I just like entrepreneurship. I left corporate America 2 years ago, built a company last 2 years. That company didn't work out, but I love entrepreneurship. I love building things. So I do that now on my own. Part of me is like, I want to get away from all these 9-to-5 games. And I think once you find that freedom and you get that freedom and you're self-sustainable, it's one of the best feelings ever. So over time, you'll also get there once you save up enough money, invest the right way, all those good things. And you don't need a lot of money to live, by the way, right? Everybody's like, I want to be a millionaire. Yeah, but you don't really need to be a millionaire to live freely. So find out what that number is for yourself. And then once you stay within those means, then you can actually be creative, build what you want, be around people that you love, all that good stuff. Where would you start? Okay, I've done that. What are the best practices for networking? I've done that. Anything not? Okay. Any live questions? Thanks so much, Sherjan. Another home run event. Oh, okay, cool. Thanks, Johnson. Any other live questions? I think we have one more question left here. What was your most profitable skill? I think my most profitable skill is I'm not worried about failure. I think failure is just normal and I fail a lot. So for me, any day is a positive. It's like, even if I fail, I'm kind of like, oh, wow, cool, I failed. What can I do next? It hurts obviously in the first minute, but then I bounce back pretty easily. And I was having this discussion with my friend. Most people's steady state is at like a 6 out of 10 in terms of happiness level. My happiness level is generally at an 8 out of 10. And then secondly, when I drop, as in I have a negative event that happens, I don't fall down too low. I fall down maybe 2 points to a 6. But then I also jump back up to an 8 pretty quickly. So if you think about yourself, try to build a personality which is usually very happy. And when it does get an impact, try to jump back to your super happy state as quickly as possible. I really like finance, but I also like consulting. Would management consulting combine these? Not really. I think if you want a combination of finance and consulting, you should go to investment banking. All right, last question. What should I do other than academics to promote myself? Start something yourself, right? That's the best thing. All right, that's the last question. Any other question for folks here that I can help answer as you guys have me here? Bree, anything else on your mind? Lair?
Nothing else particularly on my mind, but I think, Sherjan, that it's been an amazing mentor hour. I think we all learned a lot, and or at least I know I did. And if anyone has any other questions, definitely email Sherjan. He loves those emails, so definitely just shoot him that. And any other questions before we completely wrap up?
So I'll send you guys, I'll send Bree and Lara, I'll send you guys a list of links and stuff you guys can share with these guys. And then we'll put this recording up later on as well for folks who weren't here. All right. All right, team. Thanks so much. I appreciate you guys. Go have fun. Enjoy. One day I'll see you guys in Alberta, and send me an email from your McKinsey address when you get that job. All right, guys. Take care. Have a good time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Bree. Thanks, Lara. Appreciate it. We'll chat soon.
Yes, of course. Thanks, Sherjan.
Bye-bye.
Bye.